So at the end of the last video, we were talking about the methods section, and I was talking about these linking verbs, these linking phrases. So the other linking phrases are related to time. I had to cut the last video short for a second, so I'm just going to continue a bit here. Related to time, so you can use time as an organizational pattern. So use prior to conducting the analysis, and then after we did this. So you can use prior, after, while. While doing this, the mechanism was prepped, right? So this is the procedure using the passive voice. And during data collection, we were blah, blah, blah. During data collection, this occurred. You know, you can talk about what things went wrong in your research, what things went well, and you should use time to kind of, with procedures especially, time is a really useful way to organize your ideas. Justifying, so in your methods you want to justify why you use this specific method. So based on previous research, this has been commonly used, this method is commonly used, or based on previous research we have found that this method is the most useful, right? Because of its properties, this equation is ... According to previous researchers, in spite of these issues, in light of these unexpected findings, right? So this kind of language right here, this is a good segue into our results and discussion. These kinds of, in light of these unexpected findings, is definitely a good phrase to use in your discussion section when you're interpreting your data, because you're going to be talking about the findings, but not necessarily in the method. So I'm actually going to delete that from here. So again, you're talking about the limitations, you're talking about the subject, the materials, you're talking about the research aims, you're overviewing, not necessarily in all of these orders. As you can tell in our two examples, they're happening differently. So in this one, it's a little more obvious. They're using time as a way to organize here. Again, it's more of a linear structure. It's very helpful. Next, the second, right? So it's very easy to map out in your mind how they're doing their research. But they're using more explicit headings, so it's easier to see what exactly the point is of each section of the method section. And then here they're using headings, but there's a lot going on within each of these headings. There's a lot of these things stating the purpose, stating the aim, etc. Like right here, that's all happening within the larger heading. So it really depends on your field. I want you to look at the method sections in your articles, see, do you have articles that have sections like this that are very explicit? Everything is very clear where it goes, why you're talking about it because of the heading. Or do you have larger headings that actually a lot of these moves are happening within these larger headings? So I want you to check your methods out if it's more like this, or if it's more like this, or if there isn't even a method section and it's actually just part of the introduction or part of the literature review or part of another section. I also want you to look at the language. How are they leading from one paragraph to the next? How are they connecting this paragraph to this second paragraph? How are they connecting this paragraph to this paragraph? What connection phrases are they using to make it flow better, to make it easier to understand? The results sections of these two articles that I have as examples, and then I'm going to deal with some kind of misconceptions about the results section and the discussion section, and then we'll talk about language that exists in each section. How you write, the reason we're talking about the purpose, I'm sure you know the purpose of these sections. I'm sure you've written these before. I'm not trying to say that you don't know what you're doing in that sense, but truly understanding the purpose will really help you understand what language you should be using in order to express these things. So, for example, data versus results. Listing the data is very different from the results section, right? You might have data, you might have charts and diagrams that show the data, but that isn't going to be the only part of the results. The data is just the facts. The data is just what you collected, the numbers. The results explain the data. So the data includes the information, and then the results explain what that information is. All right. So that language needs to be very specific. So in the results section, you need to be empirical. No theory or comment. No personal opinion. You're just stating the facts, because basically your reader doesn't know how to read data the way that you do, right? Your reader needs to know these things. You need to point to these specific parts of these charts, of this data, so you need to lead your reader through the data just to understand it. So don't assume that your reader knows how to read data and analyze it the way that you do. But you need to do this in the results section. You're doing this in a very factual way. So the language in the results section is a little bit different. You want to use very simple language. You're going to describe the findings in terms of exact measurement. You're almost like a robot. You're not a human in this writing. You're just stating facts. So the language is like this. The ratio of 2 to 3 was ... We examined the data by ... The results suggest. The results are reported in tables 1 and 2. These estimates are consistent with ... this author's research. So again, it's very factual language, very short and simple. So let's look at an example. So the results of the impact of economic and other shocks on cognitive test scores of the children from the DID model specification in equation 5 are reported in table 2, columns 1 to 4. Report the results with different sets of controls. In column 1, we include children level characteristics. Column 2 adds household and village level covariates. Column 3 further improves the specification by including ... So this is, column 4 does this. These are just stating facts, right? Fact after fact after fact. Table 2 shows statistically significant negative impacts of the experience of the economic and the non-economic shocks on cognitive test score of children. On the cognitive test score. There's some issues here. But okay, so it's just fact after fact. Children with caregivers and household heads that have completed at least 5th grade also exhibited a higher test score by 0.2 and 0.26 standard deviations. All right, so in addition, preschool enrollment has a statistically significant positive effect on child cognitive test scores. So again, it's fact after fact after fact. This is a very good example of factual empirical language. There is no personal or subjective influence on here. All right? It explains what they controlled for. It explains all of these things. This is a perfect example of a results section. Okay? Let's look over here. Again, we're leading to the tables. As reported in Table 5, you need to be this explicit. Participants exhibited marginally higher somatic anxiety post-pressure than pre-pressure, ... They're using the past tense here. Pretty much this whole thing is in the past tense. And then here, some of it is in the present tense, like, so, I mean, I suggest doing it this way. When you're talking about what is in the tables, they are there now. You're looking at them now, so you can use the present tense, but you can talk about what happened to cause those things in the past tense. So, for example, Table 2 shows statistically significant negative impacts. That's in the present tense, right? But then down here, children with caregivers and household heads that have completed at least 5th grade also exhibited, because that happened in the past. This is present. They have completed it. That's true now, but they exhibited in the past. So you can do both. Present and past tense, depending on the situation. Again, so you need to use very empirical language, very factual, no subjectivity in this results section. You're just explaining the data. So I want you to look at the results sections in your articles and answer these questions. What tense is used in your results section and when? So what voice, active or passive? I want you to look at how, what kind of headings they're using. You can use these examples and just take out the words, So if you don't really know how to lead to a table, use this. As reported in table 4. It depends, just take out, this is the variable that you can take out of the sentence, but you can use this. It's not plagiarism to just take the template that they're using, these connection phrases, these phrases that lead you to something. Take those, use them. All right, so that's a really good way, a really effective way to use language from somebody else without plagiarizing. Just take out the important information, but use their basic template of how they did that. The results are found in, right? Are reported in. The results are reported in table 2. That's a great sentence. Use that, right? I put that there. I put some examples of how you can do that here. So are they using present tense when the information is always true? It's just always true, it always has been, it will be true. Present tense if the information exists in the tables. Past tense in the experiment and findings, when you actually were conducting the experiment using the past tense, you should check. All right. So let's talk about the discussion. Discussion is a little bit different. So if we look back here, results versus discussion, the results section does not include interpretation or comment, while the discussion section does. Sometimes the results section and the discussion section are separate, and sometimes they are the same. So I want you to look at your articles and see, are they the same section or are they separate? It's crucial to know, because you should see if there's a standard in your field to make them separate sections or make them the same. So clearly, because the discussion section includes interpretation, the language is going to be a little bit different, and also what you need to do is going to be a bit different. So you're going to be making theoretical sense of the findings. So you're going to use your theoretical framework to analyze the significance of the results. You're going to explain what they mean for your larger field. You're going to integrate your results with pre-existing research, so do a little synthesis of your findings. Now you've done some work, you're going to synthesize your work with the results in other research. You're going to use conceptual language, so more intellectual language, rather than just factual. So I want you to think about what tense is the discussion in your examples, in your articles, and what voice, active or passive, is used to discuss this. So common language, the difference between, this is a perfect example of the difference between results and discussion. Results will say the ratio of ... was. The discussion section is going to say the unexpected ratio suggests. This word unexpected, this brings in the human level, right? Because you expected one thing and then you got another one. in the discussion, that's what you want to address. You're not just talking about the facts about the ratio, you're talking about what you weren't expecting, what you were expecting, how you react to it, and what you think about it, how you think it's significant or insignificant or didn't do what you thought it would. The results of this experiment suggest, you can talk about that, it's similar to this, right? A little bit different. Here you're going to be talking about, you can say the results are reported. Sometimes you might say the results suggest. You might say the data suggest here. And then here you're going to talk about the results. I just want to make sure I fix something. The spelling. There was something wrong here. There we go. Okay. So I'm an editor. That's what I do constantly. Okay. So all of the experiments found that, right? So you might have multiple experiments and they all found the same thing. That's probably a good thing for you. Alternative explanations are, so maybe you had a problem and you're giving different explanations for the possibilities of what happened. The practical implications of these results are, these results are in line with other studies. This study complements the research of. Okay, so these are all really good templates to use. You can use these in your own writing. I encourage you to use these in your own writing. So when I'm reading your method section, your results section, your discussion section, I want to see some of this in your writing. And I also want you to try to pinpoint some ways that the people that wrote, the authors that wrote your articles that you chose for this research paper, I want you to pinpoint some of the ways that they use this language, and I want you to use that in sentences. I'm just going to show you some examples and then we'll be done. Let's look at the discussion sections. Okay, so here they're talking about the results, estimation results, and they use that language that we were talking about in table 5 and table blah, blah, blah. And then they don't have a separate section for the discussion. So they actually state a lot of these broader statements in their conclusion. For example, in their conclusion, we're going to talk about conclusions next week. They're giving background knowledge again, and then they're going to talk about the results here. They actually do the discussion in the conclusion. Our results show that experiencing drought, divorce, and price rise shocks affected child cognitive skills negatively in the period considered. These results are statistically significant and robust to different specifications. So they explain what the results mean, how they're significant for the larger field, and what they imply for their topic or even human beings. You want to make it as significant as possible because that's what makes people want to read your research. So they say specifically, it's crucial to say these are significant because you want to use that language. Your paper, if your method doesn't work and you don't have good research, your paper can still be significant. You can say it is significant that this method did not work because it was commonly seen as the way to measure this. So you can make it significant even if it doesn't work out. But in this case it did, and they're talking about how significant it is. They use the word significant. Statistically significant is a common phrase in economics and in statistics, so obviously they're going to be using that, but you can still use the word significant even if you're not analyzing statistical data, right? So you be explicit about how important the research is for the larger field. Okay, so this actually does have a separate discussion. They have a discussion for every single experiment. It's a very organized article. I'm actually going to list this on the Prezi as well so you can see it. They have 3 different experiments. They have results for all 3 experiments and a discussion for each individual experiment. And then they have a larger discussion, a general discussion. And this is where you're going to see more of the interpretive, more subjective language. So they give an overview of what the research was based on. And the model was tested using this paradigm. So what framework they were using to analyze it. It is assumed that pressure engenders ... enhance blah blah blah. So they're giving all these facts, and then they explain the hypothesis. They go over the hypothesis again in the discussion. It's a really important thing to do. And then they explain what the significance or the connection was between all three of the experiments. They give alternative explanations for what happened, for their results. They connect their results to the results of other authors, other scholars, and researchers. They discuss the limitations here in the discussion section. They give more information on the effects and the significance. They explain what the results suggest for practical implications of the results. They explain what further research should be doing. Okay? And then they explain how their research can be significant in other fields or other areas of interest. All right? So this discussion section for them is the conclusion. So this is actually a pretty ideal version, and so I would really look at this for the example, for the the general discussion section at the end. It really targets all of these different things that we were talking about that a discussion section should include, as well as a method section.